All right. So rating scale. What did a checklist, reviewing from last week, what did a checklist indicate? What was the purpose of a checklist? To show what? Progress was a use of it. What did it show? That a behavior was either right, there or not there, present or not present. So remember, that's when we use a checklist. Either it's I see it or I don't see it. Okay, and that's important because a rating scale is another tool to use in our assessment. The checklist showed if the behavior was there or not there. A rating scale tells us the degree to which the behavior is present. Okay? Rating scales are something you're very familiar with, and we're going to look at some examples in a second. A rating scale will indicate the degree to which the behavior or traits are believed to be present. A lot of assessment tools are rating scales. It differs from a checklist because you have more than two choices. Again, the checklist was you could check yes or no, present or not present, observed, not observed. A rating scale, you have more than two choices, typically 5 to 7. Often uses a graduated scale. So if we have our grades are on a graduated scale. F is what? The best or the worst? Worst. A is the best. And do we have different marks upon that continuum that is graduated from worst to best, or best to worst, however you want to look at it? Right? We have F, D, C, B, A. And where you put assignment or whatever it might be on that graduated scale indicates where a student is, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So most rating scales are on a graduated scale. It does not address the possible cause. So a limitation, just like a checklist, is we don't know what happens before or after. We're just measuring the degree to which the behavior is there. So is that an open or a closed method? If no details are recorded, then it is a what? Closed method, exactly. So we have two different types of rating scales. List specific descriptions of criteria in a horizontal line from the least to the most. So what is this a scale of, the first one? You're rating your pain. 0 means what? And 10 means? It means the worst type of pain. This is also a rating scale. What is this measuring? The entire rating scale. What is the entire rating scale measuring? Pain. It's the same thing. But instead of having numbers, we have words and pictures. No hurt is the same as this none right here, the 0, and then 10 is the same as that. So you can have different types of rating scales. But you see how it's a graduated scale, and you mark down where your pain is in this example on that scale. Yes? See, they're not hard. You got it. So here's another one. Occurs frequently, occurs sometimes, seldom occur, does not occur. Just like when we were looking at checklists, there's also on a lot of rating scales the possibility to add comments. Again, are these comments true anecdotal records? No. What are some of the things that separate when we see checklists and now rating scale that have that comments there? What are some of the things that might be missing that would separate it from a true anecdotal record? The outcome, right? The consequence, and probably also the what? The before it happened, so the antecedent. So typically when you're recording those comments on a checklist and a rating scale, you're only marking down the behavior. You're only marking down that middle portion because it's providing evidence of why you marked it there. So here's another literacy rating scale. How many times did the teacher use this rating scale? Well, what do you think?
30 times.
How many times?
30.
30 times? How many times did this teacher use the rating scale? Oh, there's an answer. How many times? Are you raising your hand? Demonstration. Are you guys ever going to come to a consensus?
No.
14? How would you come to the answer?
Out of all the 1, 2, 3, 4 times. You know, 10 plus 17 plus 21 plus 6. That's 10.
All right. So, when is the first time the teacher used the rating scale? How do you know? Okay, if the semester, let me help you. If the semester starts in September and the child leaves in June, okay, when is the first time the teacher uses rating scale? When's the next time? When's the next time? When's the next time? When's the next time? When's the next time?
11. Oh, 10, 29.
Next?
11, 11, 21. That's one.
Okay. When's the next time?
That's supposed to be 21.
All right. Oy vey. All right, there you go. Now, after 116. Okay. 116.
Oh, sorry.
Did we get them all?
There's 2.
Okay. So we don't know what date those zeros are recorded, but they do create confusion, right? What was the purpose of those zeros? Do you know? What date she recorded those zeros? No. So how many times did this teacher use the rating scale? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? So how does this show us progress? The first time she used the rating scale was on September 10th, and the last time was February 7th. So how does this rating scale show us progress? So it's over a period of time. Do we see the child progressing in their skill ability? Yes, give me an example. So interest in the books. So we go from September 10th, he has no interest, avoids books, and on October 17th, he's only an adult initiated. What happened there? Well, I mean, what does that 10-17, what happened?
The teacher.
Okay, let me rephrase my question. What was the behavior that the child demonstrated? Did they ask for the book? Did they go get the book? Did they hand the teacher the book? We don't know, right? The only thing that we know is that he showed a book if the adult initiated it, right? So rating scales will show progress. The concept of the book format, we have no idea what these zeros mean. So you see a limitation right here because we don't know when she did this. We don't know what exactly she's meaning, or he, by the zero. But we see that he goes from demonstrated a front and back concept on the 29th, and on the 7th, he sat and looked at every page of the dinosaur book. Okay, so we have the comment here. Does this little comment give you more information than just looks at pages left to right? Yes, does it give you the whole context of who he was with, how we interacted, what he said, how we held the pages, any of those details? No, but it does give you a little bit more about what the behavior was that was happening. Okay, so a rating scale is able to show progress, but we're missing some of those details. But it does show us progress over time. All right, so what are some of the typical scales that we see on rating scales? Advanced, proficient, partially proficient, needs development, exceed standards, meet standards, progressing towards standards, never, sometimes, always. This is probably a very familiar one that you'll see. We use rating scales all the time, and this is very typically a scale that we'll see. And grading. Again, this is the most common rating scale that you're going to see, or that you've rather been exposed to your entire life since 3rd grade. So what are the uses of rating scales? Just like a checklist, is it quicker and more convenient than doing multiple anecdotal records? Yes. More choices than a checklist. If you were to do a checklist, you could only say if the behavior was there or not there versus the degree to which the behavior is there. So we have some advantages. We see the skills advancing along a continuum. Like in a checklist, you can only say, oh, he's doing it, and then he's not doing it, or he's not doing it, and then he's doing it. Versus a rating scale, if we were to revisit the picture that we looked at last week where the child was using the scissors, could we create a rating scale of the child's progression of using scissors? Yeah, so instead of just saying he could use scissors or he couldn't use scissors, we could have a rating scale to the degree to which he was using the scissors. Okay, and that would yield more information. You could revisit over time to see progress. So you could use the same rating scale to see progress. One of the rating scales we're going to take a look at that you're going to use most often in your career is the PRDP. This is simply a rating scale. So what are some of the disadvantages? The details are lost. Selective and subjective. Again, just like a checklist, when we were looking at the literacy checklist, literacy rating scale, did we know what those zeros meant in the rating scale? No, so we're not sure what she meant. Okay? So we interpret it certain ways. It's not useful for spontaneous events. If we go outside, do we have to decide what it is we're going to be measuring depending on what type of what type of rating scale we bring out? Yes. So you can't use it for spontaneous events. So the rating scale that you guys are going to create, this is going to be a very helpful slide for you to return to using these criterion for the rating scale you'll create for that observation assessment project or portfolio. I can't remember what I titled it. Okay? So you're going to identify the learning outcomes that the scale is intended to assess. So on that assignment that you have to complete, just like on the checklist, what is it you have to put at the top? Do you remember? What do you have to put? Child death, that too. What? Huh?
What day you observed?
What day? Yes, all of those things. What else? What's the big bolded question? That'll give you, that addresses that first bullet point right there. Exactly. You have to answer the question, what do I want to find out about the child? Is that important to figure out before you create a rating scale? Yes. Because if you want to find out how they're doing in cognitive development, will you be rating them on how well they run, hop, skip, jump, and manipulate objects? No. So you have to decide what it is you want to know about the child. Determine what characteristic of the learning outcomes are most significant for assessment on the scale. Again, when we took a look at those checklists, were there some that were 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 pages long? Yes, and so do you have to make a decision about what are the milestones you're going to have to measure? Even when you narrow it down to the domain, do you have to make a intentional choice about what exactly in that domain you're going to measure? Yes. So those is going to indicate what are the different points on your rating scale. Characteristics should be directly observable and points on the scale clearly defined. Okay? So you have to be able to observe the behavior you're measuring. Select the type of scale that is most appropriate. We saw 3 different types of scales. One had numbers, one had pictures, and then one had words in the concept, the literacy rating scale. So when you go to create your own rating scale, you're going to have to decide what is going to work best. What type of markers does our grading scale use? A, B, C, D, F. Those are what? Letter grades, right? And they are equivalent to certain things. A is way above average or something like that. F is fail, right? So you have to decide what are the points and the positions on your rating scale, or what type of rating scale you're going to do, and then you're going to have to figure out how many rating positions you are. What you typically see on a rating scale is 3 to 7 positions. Okay? Some have more, some have less, but typically what you're going to see is 3 to 7 positions. If you get to be 10, 15, 20, sometimes it can be difficult to discern if someone's filling it out, and what do you think is most likely to happen? They're going to do what? If you have a rating scale, and I don't know really what I'm going to do, and it's 1 to 10, what do? You just do what? Possibly randomly doing it? Split the difference, which is typically where? If you have 1 to 10, what do you do? 5. That's the most common answer on rating scales, 1 to 10. If you go down the middle. So why do you think is 3 to 7 an even or an odd number? An odd. Is there a middle? Not on a rating scale. You wouldn't have a 2.5, 3.5, whatever it is. Whatever it might be. So if you have an odd amount of points on your rating scale, you're less likely to have people just go down and mark the middle of it. Okay? Because I know you guys do it. I do it too. The number of the points on the scale will depend on how many levels of accomplishment are needed for the assessment. So you have to figure out what it is you're measuring and see how many points are needed on there to measure it. All right. So now you're going to have a chance to do it, and you can take a quick break before you start this. But what you're going to do is you're going to construct in groups, and actually go take a break, and then I'm going to put you in groups. You're going to construct a rating scale for Walmart. Okay, that's typically everybody's familiar with Walmart. Has everybody been in a Walmart more than once? Yes. Typically they have. If they haven't, then let me know. So you're going to decide. Remember, you're creating a rating scale. So you're constructing it. The only criteria I'm giving you is that it's a rating scale on Walmart. So think of the criteria that would make it an excellent place to shop. Think of the worst qualities that would prevent you from shopping there. So that should be the parameters of your rating scale. Place the characteristics in between. You are choosing what you're measuring. The only thing I'm saying is you're creating a rating scale for Walmart. Think about the rating scales that you have the example of. Think about the literacy rating scale. Think about other ones you might be familiar with. Okay? All right, take a quick 7-minute break. Get up and move. You guys are falling asleep. All right, so what were some of the things that you noticed? Were they all the same?
No.
What weren't you evaluating the same thing? You were all evaluating, assessing Walmart, correct? So why were the rating scales different? What do you think made them different? what's important to you, right?
How we view it, what we're looking for as individuals.
How you view it, what you're looking for. So even though you're assessing the same thing, because of what you felt was personally important, did that change the information that you would have gathered about Walmart? Yes. So how do you think that that applies to using rating scales with young children? Do you think that a teacher's theoretical approach, what they believe about young children, do you think that's going to influence the information they gain about children because of the tools they choose to use? Yes. And so that's one of the things that we have to be aware of for any type of tool that a teacher will choose, a checklist or a rating scale or frequency counts that we're going to talk about in just a second. What we find to be important is what we're going to focus in on. Did each group, did you guys immediately come to a consensus about what you would be evaluating? Or did you have to discuss it and decide what are the different parts of the rating scale? Yeah. All right. So now don't get defensive, because we tend to get defensive. We're going to discuss, so what are some of the weaknesses and strengths of each of the checklists? So what are some of the weaknesses and strengths of checklist number 1? So it only rates customer service. Okay? So we would get information on Walmart, but it would be on one part of Walmart, right? Just on customer service. So we would equate this to a rating scale just on physical development. Does this give us an entire picture of Walmart? No, it gives us a picture of one part. So we couldn't say if all of Walmart was great, just like we couldn't, just because we did a rating scale on physical development of a child, could we say they are absolutely above average on everything because you've done a physical development checklist or rating scale? No, you would have to do a rating scale on all domains of development, correct? So just like, does this tell you all about Walmart? But does it tell you about the customer service of Walmart? Yes. What else? What are some other strengths or weaknesses?
The basis question. The basis question.
The basis, is that a weakness or strength?
Strength.
It's a strength. Does it give you multiple points of clarification? So what does 1 mean? What does 2 mean? What does 3 mean? Yeah. Oh, 1 means I'm really not happy with it. 3 means I'm really happy with it. I have a happy face. What else?
So could put more like under the on the side, like more things check or like re-rating more.
Some more indicators?
No, on for like refunds, registers, cleanliness. It like
So further divided up.
not further divided up, but like more aspects of more things to look at.
So it's possibly subjective about what do you mean by I'm satisfied with the registers? Who created this checklist? Do you guys know what you mean by registers? Yeah, you know what you mean, right? You have a very clear image in your head because you wrote it. Does anybody else in the room know what they mean by I am not satisfied with the registers? What are some hypotheses? That there's not enough? That they're not working? That they're too slow? That they're not staffed? That they're cluttery? But you guys knew what you meant, right? But when we pick up a tool, we have to make the assumption about what the writer of the tool is meaning. So when we pick up tools, should it be very obvious what is being measured? Otherwise, it becomes objective or subjective. Subjective, right? And that was the same dilemma with the checklist. If it wasn't in detail enough, if the word wasn't defined well enough, we weren't sure exactly what we were measuring. Okay? What about this one? Strengths or weaknesses?
It seems overall.
Seemed overwhelming?
Seems like somebody would want to take that.
because it has too many. So especially when we look at checklists and rating scale, it's finding that balance between what is too many and what is too few. Does it depend on what exactly we're measuring? Yeah. All right. Anything else on the other one? Okay. So strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. Okay. So it's measuring customer service, and we have multiple aspects of customer service, items and prices, multiple aspects of items and prices, cleanliness, multiple aspects, and safety, multiple aspects.
You can even break that into 4 different rating scales and even at separate times so we don't get along.
That is definitely a choice. It's like choosing to have rating scales in different domains and assessing them at different times. What else?
They have like questions so you know exactly what they're asking instead of not knowing answer. You know exactly what you're going to ask.
Good. So it's less subjective. Good. You see how each group has different words that they use for their rating scale. All right. What about this one? Do we have still a different rating scale? What strengths and weaknesses of this one? You had a comments box. None of the other one had a place to comment, right? What else? Okay. So I don't know what exactly it's measuring. We know it's Walmart, but anything in particular? Which that one didn't have a title either. What else?
I think the rating on satisfaction.
Huh?
Either rating on satisfaction.
This is rating satisfaction?
Right? Is that what it says? Like satisfied, not satisfied?
Yeah. Highly satisfied, satisfied, unsatisfied, needs improvement, or comments. So this is hard to understand, maybe subjective. What being satisfied is and not satisfied, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just seen it more like a, like a survey kind of one. I don't know.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so we're left to, what's that word, objective or subjective? Subjective, we're left to interpret what does it mean by food quality. Does it mean the actual types of foods? Are they high quality or low quality, organic or not organic? Or is how it's arranged, is it quality? So we're left to interpret what it means, right? All right, for sake of time, what about this one? Strengths, weaknesses? Okay, so strength. What else? Okay, so each of these is broken down into other categories. Anything else? All right, what about this one? Oh. Does it make you happy? All right. What about this one? Okay. So it's not on a graduated scale. And again, rating scales don't have to be on a graduated scale, but it offers more clarity when it is on a graduated scale. What else? Oh, is that what it is? measuring, what would be a good way to avoid doing that? Give it to another person and say, couldn't you figure this out? Do you know what you're supposed to do? I highly advise doing that, because if I pull it up and I can't figure it out, then you're not going to get a grade on it. All right, so make sure, a lot of times when we do something and we create something, our brain fills in the gaps, but it doesn't mean somebody else knows what's going on. Okay? All right. So we talked about a lot of these within the context of doing that assignment, but I just wanted to review it really quick. What you choose to evaluate, does that make a difference on which rating scale you choose? Does your theoretical perspective, does your personal beliefs influence what you chose to put on your Walmart rating scale? If you're a neat freak, and I say that lovingly because I'm in that category for my house, is cleanliness important to you on that Walmart? Was that something you said, we need to have cleanliness on there because, they fail? If one of your points of irritation is walking in and never being able to find someone to help you, and that drives you crazy, would you definitely put customer service on there? Yes. So your own theoretical perspective is going to matter on there. So if we take that and we equate it to young children, if you firmly believe that by a year old they need to be holding their own utensils or their own bottle, if you created a rating scale, would you make sure that that was on there? Yes. For another teacher who that skill is not a priority to them, would they leave it out? Yes. So our own theoretical perspective is going to influence our rating scale. How many indicators we have on there, what we choose to list, what we choose to measure. So we really want to have an understanding of the theory behind the rating scale that we choose. And this applies to checklists also. All right. So one of the last concepts we're going to discuss, and we'll come back to the video in just a second, is the concept of reliability and validity. All right. So just like when we discuss objective and subjective, these are two of the terms that we're going to be looking at throughout the rest of the semester. Every time we take a look at another assessment tool, we're going to say, not only is it objective, but is it both reliable and valid? So we really need to have an understanding of what these terms mean. So the first one is validity, or is it valid? So when we're looking at if something is valid, we're asking, does it measure what it says it's going to measure? So if I was looking at motor development, what are some of the questions you would expect to be on there in order for it to be a valid tool? If it was measuring motor development for a 4-year-old, what were some of the questions you would expect to have on there? Okay, so have categories for fine motor and gross motor development. What else? Can they jump? Can they hop on one foot? Can they skip? Can they pick up items? Can they change hands? Those are the types of things you would expect in order for it to be measuring motor development. Would you expect to see, can the child sort and classify? Does this child show spatial awareness? Does the child use receptive and expressive language? No. Those are great questions, but does it give you information about their motor development? No, it doesn't. It's not valid. It gives you information, but it doesn't measure what it says it's going to measure. And we think this is self-explanatory, right? Wouldn't a tool that says it's measuring motor development, wouldn't it be really obvious? But if you have a tool that says it measures a child's special needs, and I see this a lot on special needs, do we need to make sure that it actually is telling us information that's going to give us accurate assessments? Yes. And again, the most common way I see tools that aren't valid is things that say, does your child have autism? Use this checklist and diagnose it. Do you think that that's probably valid or invalid? Invalid. It's probably not going to measure what it says it's measuring. That tool gives you information, but it doesn't necessarily give you information for this. Okay? So the other tool, the other term is it reliable? Will it give us accurate information every time I use the tool? And we're going to watch a quick video that's going to explain and illustrate these concepts really, really well in just a second. Every time I pick up the tool, am I getting consistent information? Can I reliably say this is going to tell me if the child is developing typically? Okay? If we have a child and they're a second language learner, they learned English, they immigrated to the country 2 weeks ago, and I give them a standardized math test in English, is that a reliable measurement of their math skills? No, it doesn't give us the information about their math skills. Will it get closer as a child masters English and learns English? Will it give us better information? Yes, but will it give us the same information every time? No, because it's not a reliable measurement. Okay? Is the measurement consistent over time? Okay. And I want to show you the video really quick because it's going to do a good job of illustrating this in a bit.
We will look at an example of reliability and validity as applied to a measuring tool. Here we have an apple. We want to measure this apple to find